But not this time,
Speaking of,
Gia.
yeah.
Our next match of the day, Kin versus Ryvius. Take us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, very different now because Kin is not bringing Warrior at all, which I'm very surprised to see. And Ryvius with the Warrior, it's been left up. And if we know anything about Kin, it's that if he's going off meta and not banning the things that we expect, he's got a game plan for it.
Yeah, Kin is one of 2 players to not bring Warrior, the other one of whom is Blitzchung. And with them being the 2 players from Hong Kong here in Asia Pacific, I'd have to imagine that they were practicing together and coming to this conclusion. As with everything Kin does, I wish I could get his opinion or his input on his thinking as to how it went through, because I'm always left kind of curious to his thought process, but it clearly is working. He's the most consistent player, arguably, outside of Glory, with 3 top 8s in a row, as well as a couple of top 4s thrown in there for good measure. But not bringing the best deck in the game right now, surely he has to be crazy.
I mean, it's still arguable, I suppose, if you believe Warrior is the best. I will say that for this week, it seems to be the most banned deck. So that's still a reason for bringing it, because it's just kind of like, well, if your opponent's forced to ban this, that means they can't ban this other good deck that I have. And that just gives you an advantage in theory. But maybe Kin's thinking that Warrior possibly has some weaknesses. And we can see here that he's got a Highlander Hunter. That's a deck that I feel has some pretty good game against Warrior.
I think that deck does, which is why Ryvius has banned the Hunter away, and the remaining 3 decks for Kin are the Demon Hunter, Druid, and Rogue. 3 decks which, in my opinion, are unfavored up against the Warrior. The Demon Hunter, you're gaining too much armor. The Druid, you're removing all their stuff and throwing down big boards. And the Rogue, most of the time, in my opinion, it just kind of dies to the Warrior. They get too much damage in over the course of the game and can close things out with Korkron or Grom. But at the very least, I'm super excited to see a little bit of Warrior. It is one of the hardest decks I've played in a very long time, and is also one of my favorite decks for exactly that reason.
And Ryvius himself has a bit of spice in his lineup. He's got Warlock, and not Zoo, but actually Malagos Warlock. I'm not looking at this wrong, am I? There's no Galakron in here.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just getting the deck list up now myself for Ryvius. And you are right. This is a quest Warlock that is just running Malagos, hopefully looking to shuffle it in a little bit later. We did do a bit of practicing with Raven on this particular archetype up against a Warrior I was playing mostly. But this is a weird deck. I think we can take a look at it now to get a good idea of how it's functioning. There is all the kind of classic quest Warlock stuff thrown in there, like the Questing Explorer, obviously the quest itself to draw a whole bunch of cards, and and then the plot twist to get that fuel in order to make sure that the quest is completed in time.
And do you remember as early as week 1, before the nerf to Sacrificial Pact was active, I was talking about how among all these Galakron Warlocks, it seems like a little bit of burst could really help the matchup because they're so slow at the beginning. And I was saying that there were whisperings and floating around deck lists of a Malagos build to take advantage of the powerful burst in cards like Nether Breath and now also Soulfire. And it seems Ryvius has gone all the way and just decided to bring it here for us and see if that theory can hold true. And Ryvius, our week 1 champion, has actually not really been to the top 8 since then, but managed to get in to Division A anyway. So now I think he's got a lot to prove that he's still got it.
He does indeed. And I will say that with this deck, I see the reasoning behind it. I don't necessarily see it working in practice. When we were practicing with it, it was looking, pretty weak. Overall, the win condition was rarely coming together. To be fair, I think it is primarily not a Malagos deck. It's just a Warlock removal deck at the moment is the main way that it functions. And the Malagos and Alexstrasza are there to enable your Nether Breath and your Crazed Netherwings as well for that incredibly strong anti-aggro AoE removal. If you have to go to the late game and try and win with Malagos, I think that's where the deck starts to look a little bit more shaky. But up against the likes of Kin's decks, the Rogue and the Demon Hunter in the early game, I think it could maybe throw down enough removal to have a good chance there.
Very interesting. I would also be curious to see how it lines up against Warrior, for example, but Kin is not himself bringing it, so maybe another series for Ryvius can prove that to us. So Ryvius's other decks, the Warrior and the Demon Hunter, looking pretty standard, us on the Grom boat inclusion in Warrior. But this rogue is Highlander, the first Highlander we've seen throughout the day, because it seems most people are already settled on the 2 OBS plus secret package list.
That's right, I believe he's the only Highlander here in Asia Pacific, which is not a deviation that I expected to see quite so strongly. But before we get into that, thank goodness we get to see this monstrosity that Ryvius has created here on the Warlock. I just want to, I mean, it's my job, so I can't do this, but I want to sit back and just watch what Ryvius is going to try and do with this deck, because I believe 100% he's got some trick up his sleeve with it, but I am yet to see it.
I mean, you call it a monstrosity, but Ryvius is the guy who's just sometimes ahead of the curve. He will bring off meta things or just unexpected techs like the Ysera in week 1 Druid that nobody else really had, and he has success with it. So you know what, I'm gonna give Ryvius the benefit of the doubt here. This deck has something cooking up, and you know what, even if it's just a lot of removal, that seems pretty good against Druid.
Well, let's wait and see. I'd have to imagine that if he wants to take this series up against a Ysera Druid, oh actually sorry, this is a new Druid, so I'm just gonna check the list for Kin. I believe he is running the Ysera, though we saw it in the Mulligan. If he is going to outvalue a Ysera deck, he is going to need a heck of a lot of removal. I think potentially more than there is in the deck. So if Ryvius is going to take the series, or the game I should say, I think he's going to be relying on a Malagos win condition of some kind.
I'm hesitant to say if there isn't enough removal. It depends on how Kin staggers it, right? For the 2 Glowfly boards, I think that's easily dealt with by things like Netherwing, Crazy, Dark Skies, and even the Moorg here.
Yeah.
And then Ryvius is still packing one of Nether and Zephyrus. So if Kin goes all in with, say, the Mount Sellers, that can be answered by 1 Twisting Nether and 1 Zephyrus to get another Nether, for example. But if the Ysera staggers all of the dragons on different turns, maybe that presents a threat for Ryvius.
Well, again, speaking of the hidden genius that Ryvius is trying to pull together here, it looks like his game plan of going for a Malagos lethal could potentially still be working. Frizz has been played, so it's now a 7-mana Malagos, which can be drawn off of the plot twist. And then when Quest is completed, he can try and start tapping to it for 0 mana later on in the game.
That would be pretty sick. And you know what? I didn't even notice that Moorg Artificer is a demon. That just makes sense for running Sun's Demons in this list. Always learning something new, which is why I love to watch Ryvius play. But while we were talking about all of that, Kin's already got the ability to coin this Mount Seller if he wants, but if we've learned anything, we probably save all of those for a bigger payoff on them.
Absolutely. In this matchup, like you were saying, where he needs to just milk all the value that he can to try and outlast the Druid's removal, the Warlock's removal, this seems like a very strong play. It still comes down a turn before Twisting Nether, so I love this play from Kin.
And Ryvius with the full hand plot twist, the bread and butter for Quest Warlock. One of the cards that can potentially close out the game later on with Malagos. So his quest
the goose.
will be completed next turn. He might be sad to see the Malagos already in hand, because that means unless he can plot twist it back into the deck with the other plot twist, he won't be reducing it to 0 mana.
I think he'd like to have the option, because here he's got it for 7 mana, whereas if he had to shuffle it back in, it potentially could go up to 9 mana. Whereas now he can just go for Netherbreath, Soulfire, Malagos for a very respectable amount of burst damage, up to 18, I think, on 1 turn. But, like you said, if he needs a bit extra, he could get the second plot twist and try and shuffle it back in.
I think, interestingly enough, the fact that Malagos goes down to 7 means that Ryvius might be able to find a spot to actually just play it before it's lethal and maybe stick it onto the board. I'm thinking if he... for Kin's following board, it's not likely because it's going to be a lot of big beasts. But say if you can land Dark Skies, or say Rain of Fire, the other Moorg on a Glowfly board, that leaves enough mana to stick Malagos. But let's worry about that later, because Kin's about to do the old pop-off.
Yeah, I think pretty much any beast that he can find at all here will be fine.
Ooh,
And Zixor, That's a great start. We were talking about exhausting the druid with Ysera potentially coming down later. Zixor and Zixor Prime for their 4/4s later on. Ryvius is going to be hard-pressed to kill all of this.
Yeah, the longer this goes, it seems less likely that Ryvius can actually get there just by removing and fatiguing the druid. Only Highlander paladins can do that, guys. So as early as now, is it going to have to be Zephyrus for Brawl? I'm not seeing a good way to deal with this outside of that. Okay, so
Moog is a big draw.
So the Dark Skies will have 8 rocks if he goes Moarg into Dark Skies.
Yep.
That's not quite enough to deal with this board.
So it could be tap first, and then Moog, Rain of Fire, then Dark Skies.
I'm a little bit confused by this.
I think
Does a lot of removal without gaining Ryvius any advantage, because if the Mount Seller sticks, Kin gets free redevelopment, essentially.
Yep. Again, like you said, that was a little bit... He played that too quickly
Obviously,
for me to
I just
figure out.
realized, of course, Zephyrus isn't active yet, because this isn't a Highlander deck. But... Okay,
well, I mean, the main thing I was looking at was just Moog there with Dark Skies and a Rain of Fire. With a tap that could have been thrown in there as well. Or without the Rain of Fire, sorry. But the important thing now is Zixor Prime found, Ysera found, neither of them discarded off of the Fungal Fortunes, both of which I believe have been played now. So for Kin, with a fully healed up exotic Mount Seller, developing another board seemingly out of nowhere, I am just absolutely loving the position he's got himself in.
Yeah, very powerful. Ryvius has to tap into his Nether, which is a 1-of in the deck, to be able to deal with this, because he's used basically every other AoE. Oh! He did it! And that's before the Sense Demons to thin the deck.
Yes.
Impressive. But Kin's got the juice. He's got, if he wants to, oh my gosh. He's got every threat he wants. He can go Glowfly. I think that's the worst. I think Zixor. I think that's the second worst because of Crazy Netherwing plus, say, Rain of Fire or something like that. Or he can go Ysera Mount Seller.
Yeah, I think the two plays here were either like Ysera just played it out, Ysera draw a card with Innovate into Rising Winds, or as we're seeing here, just going with the Mount Seller, which just, again, keeps the pressure so high. It doesn't mean threats are coming later on. The threat is here, and you need to answer it or you're going to lose.
True enough. Just more development for Kin, I wouldn't hate to see.
Ooh, interesting.
Kind of spicy. Does he ever set up a 2-turn if he goes Alex Face, Unstables 1 minion? Oh, that's pretty good. That seems insane. He goes Netherwing, Alex, or do you even Alex first and Netherwing just to put them that bit lower? Who cares about damaging your Alex?
It's a good question. He has 18 burst damage, I believe, on the following turn with Malagos. Oh no, wait, he can't play all those 3 dragons, or the Dark Skies won't be active. So then it would only be 16 damage instead of 18, which is still lethal.
Ah, this is smart as well. Gives him the full clear, maintains 2 dragons in hand. But will it be a little bit too slow because he's now got to take another turn to play the Alex? So it's good if he thinks the response is just a Ysera, because that's obviously not threatening from Kin. It's just setting up for a threatening board.
Yeah, you know what? I think I did like the Alex Straza play on that turn because both Crystal Powers have been played, I believe, which means the only heal left to get above 16 would be the Overflow, which is fine if your opponent wants to play that and not develop anything. Obviously, it would leave a exotic Mount Seller on the board, but pretty likely to set up the 16 damage lethal with Nether Breath Soulfire next turn.
No, I think I agree as well. He's probably playing around just exactly the other Overflow, which I suppose is understandable because Kin's so deep into his deck.
He's missing out on all the big boys for 0 mana, unfortunately, here. And Zephyrus is awkward, to say the least. They're one attack off of the Shadowwood Ruin.
I was gonna say, I was liking the look of just developing this turn because it seems like the board from Kin isn't overly threatening at just 3 minions. 1 Savage Roar would be not lethal. But Ryvius says, you know what, just take the board this turn. And I like this. I think he doesn't need the other Nether Breath if he just takes the board this turn.
That's fair. Maybe I was tunnel visioning a little bit too hard on the burst damage plan there. I think he could have still set it up a turn earlier, maybe a bit more effectively. But again, as I was saying, I am just waiting to see what Ryvius has with this deck. I'm trying to piece together what he's going for, but I haven't been jamming too much Quest Malagos Warlock ladder.
Same, Derek, same.
Well, here we go. Draw on the same turn.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Draw with the Ysera, he said, I think he's got to do that and hit a taunt. Either a taunt or something that can help deal with this board, like 2 rushes. That is pretty good, though.
That is pretty good. And Ryvius does not have lethal quite yet, I believe.
Not that I can see.
Oh no, Inner Fire!
Oh,
Inner Fire's lethal!
Oh, Inner Fire! You're right! Oh my god, that's crazy! I forgot this card was still in Standard because Divine Spirit rotated. But that is nuts! Ryvius knew it immediately.
Fair play, Ryvius. I've forgotten all of my quibbles I had with his mid-game plan. The quickness with which he went for that setup for lethal there was very, very spot on. And there was very little answer at all for the Druid to fight back against.
To be fair, I think that he really needed to luck out on that tap into Twisting Nether because he was just dead that turn. But everything else, Ryvius set up pretty well leading into that. We had qualms with that turn where he used 3 pieces of removal, but it kind of gave him the time, I suppose, to get 1 more turn to get Nether.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the right way of thinking about it, but overall, I'm with that end game where he really had that chance to set up a burst game plan, pivoted instead to taking the board, and he did find a very good game plan, even if it wasn't the Inner Fire for lethal that turn.
Right.
I don't think Kin had a very good comeback mechanism to deal with a lethal next turn.
And even though that turn looked a bit awkward for Ryvius, where he, like you said, went for the double Dark Skies plus the Rain of Fire, having looked back on it a little bit more and having the benefit of hindsight, at the time, it looked like he was going for it very quickly because he didn't think it through. I think he just figured out pretty quickly that that was the only play that cleared enough of the board to really survive, because he only had 7 mana, which only allowed for Moarg, Rain of Fire plus Dark Skies. It didn't allow for a tap as well, or to fit the Moarg in with anything else. And I think that maybe would have potentially cleared even less. Again, it's a lot of maths to do very, very quickly. But I think it gave him enough of a chance of survival to carry on to the later stages of the game. And as you said, hit the Twisting Nether later on.
Well, that will be the last of that Warlock that we're seeing for this series at least. And for the day, which, you know what, I'm pretty upset about because I want to see more of this deck in action. But we can also see what Kin is bringing because I'm still intrigued by what his mindset is for not bringing Warrior.
We can
and leaving it up as well.
Yes, I'm also excited to see what he can bring to the table for that. But before we can get to see what he will bring to counter the remainder of Ryvius' decks, now that he is 0-1 down, we're going to go to a quick break. And when we come back, Kin versus Ryvius will continue.
Oh, favorite smell.
同じ匂い。
パッと思いつかないんですけど、自宅の匂いとかですかね。なんか落ち着く感じがだいぶ好きです。
The smell of some bacons, because I really like them. I always have them when I have breakfast in America.
好きな匂いは和室で過ごしてきたことが多かったので畳の匂いです。
好きな匂いは猫の匂いです。
我觉得我比较喜欢的味道，我觉得是我自己。
라벤더 향? 디퓨저로 그거 많이 써요.
Fruit?
Like orange.
我还蛮喜欢闻自己的。
What does it smell like? It's the third series of the day here for Hearthstone Grandmasters, and Ryvius has taken a win over Kin with his very weird and wacky quest warlock. Like Gia was just saying, we're a little bit sad we don't get to see more of it, but it was undeniably an impressive feat in the one game we did get to see, Gia.
Yeah, it was pretty much doing nothing in the early game as you would expect, and it kind of lines up with the Druid nothing, drawing cards at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then Druid kind of starts doing things a little bit earlier on, and then they never stop doing things. So I was really worried for Ryvius there towards the end game. But once he hit that Alex Straza, I think he really found the game plan, the pivot, and not even using much of the burst at all. I don't think he even ended up using Malagos or Nether Breath to the face in that whole game, and just got there with the minions. So it seems Ryvius has quite a few reps on that deck, and maybe we'll see it in the future. But now it's a story of whether Kin can get the win with his warriorless lineup.
That's right. And, well, speaking of decks that do things, and Warrior as well, we are going to get to see, I believe, the Warrior in the next game for Ryvius. And despite being brought by 14 out of the 16 players here in Asia Pacific, with only Blitzchung and King omitting it from their lineup, I don't think we're going to get to see it that much, because it's just going to be banned the vast majority of the time. First two series of the day, double ban very easily, because it feels like with Demon Hunter and Rogue being two of the best classes aside from that, and being so weak to Warrior, you've got to just get rid of it. But now, it is going to be lining up against the Rogue for Ryvius on Kin's side. And I am definitely curious to see what the thinking is from Kin in leaving it up, because this feels like a pretty good matchup to the Warrior for me.
I would tend to agree, and I'm trying to get into Kin's mindset for this. It seems like most of the players going into the week have kind of accepted that as far as the best decks in the meta right now, Demon Hunter and Warrior, the Demon Hunter seems to have more exploitable characteristics, such as having a bunch of low health minions, and maybe something like weapon removal can really punish them. Whereas Warrior, I feel, is harder to target in that sense because it has so many flexible game plans. Like if you start removing their early game, so the early game they start to build up the Korkron Elite combo instead. And if you just try to outlast them to the late game, they have that, right? So I'm not sure whether Kin is prepared to deal with that level of flexibility for Warrior, especially given that the one deck that I thought has a very good chance against it has been banned out.
It has indeed, yeah. And well done there by Ryvius in getting rid of the Hunter. It does feel like that was, despite it being not the strongest class at the moment, probably the best ban. But I really like the point you bring up there about the flexibility of Warrior. There are multiple different ways it can function against multiple different matchups. What is the overall strategy you're looking for against Rogue? Is it going for those super late game combos? Is it developing early game? Is it focusing on removal? How do you like playing this matchup?
I would say that against particularly Rogue, the tempo game plan stands out to me as being very strong. Something like the early Warmal challengers into buff. How does Rogue deal with that outside of exactly a bounce effect?
I can definitely get on board with that. Any kind of plan that involves damage to the face early on is a plan that I am on board with against the Rogue. Because again, it's the fact that Rogue has no healing at the moment. They are still a very strong class, but that is the part that is most easy to exploit against them.
We see that the list from Ryvius is cutting one Serpent Egg, only runs one right now, but it has the double 12 years cards that are very, very problematic for Rogue to deal with because they can't seal fade it, they can't backstab it. So what are they going to do in the early game? They're gonna Blackjack Stunner it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the best he's got. To be fair, it's a decent tempo swing to keep him ahead early on, because like I was saying, Kin wants to stop the damage early on. That is one of the main ways I feel like you're losing, and if it heads into the mid-game and it's like a draw fest where Warrior is trying to draw through their whole deck, Kin's got a hand that can stand up against that. Togwaggle alone should be all the card draw he needs.
Definitely see that. Ryvius with the Bomb Wrangler on curve, probably his only decent play here. Of course, it kind of sucks if the Rogue has Seal Fate, but he'll get a little bit rewarded here with 2 Boom Bots. I think he probably wants to save at least the cheap pull here as another Battle Rage pop. Because as it stands, he doesn't have the Corsair cash, he doesn't have ways of drawing into the Skipper just yet. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, that is absolutely what you are looking for. And Ankar is pretty undeniably the better of the 2 weapons to find there, because now the Risky Skipper enters the hand, the Battle Rages start becoming active, Armorsmith draws 1,000,000 cards. As if from nowhere, the entire deck starts to come together.
It really does. And look, Ryvius shipping it all to the face. He says, I don't care about this board. It's getting killed by Risky Skipper anyway. And the Rogue is hardly going to deal him any damage, and if it does, he's gaining armor anyway. I really like this from Ryvius.
Absolutely spot on. The entire hand now, to me, screams, get a lot of damage face. As soon as the Rogue develops with all their lackeys around turn 5 and 6, then you start popping off with the removal, and eventually, you'll just find the lethal with Korkron OTK.
Now, to be fair to Kin, he has put on a decent amount of pressure now with this Faceless Corruptor. It's just that bit of mana. I guess for Warrior, in my experience, the pop-off turns tend to be around 6-7 mana. Ideally, you want to play at least 2 minions with the Skipper and the Battle Rage.
Right.
So that won't be online for a while. So Kin is saying, in this window where Ryvius can't comfortably remove all of my stuff and get his card draw, I'm going to deal as much damage as possible.
So Ryvius does actually have a guaranteed clear here. If he swings with the weapon into one of the 4/4s, he will get a 1-cost minion guaranteed, and then he can go Risky Skipper 1-cost, hoping that it is a not the other Risky Skipper, and instead was the other 1-mana Pirate. He could then have got a he could have played the Blood Boiled Brute on the same turn to clear the board, but in the end, he's deviating away from that plan, which I think is smart because you don't want to use both Risky Skippers on the same turn.
Right. And I think in this matchup, you have the license to use 1 Skipper for not that much value, and it's still a 3-card Battle Rage.
Yes.
Definitely
I agree
fine.
completely.
So Kin here,
if he got the Sky Raider, he maybe could have pivoted away, but for the moment, this is definitely smart.
Kin here, if he wants, can value trade and then step the Corruptor, play it again on a Lackey. And that would leave him another lackey in hand to play with Tog for the following turn. To me, it's just looking like try to cheese out the warrior. Maybe they don't draw the armor smith. I don't know if Rogue can get there just by playing slow. Unless we have seen Kin, I think, get exactly Kronk's Galakron off of his wands before, and that won him this matchup. So it's something like that.
I think this is a really good spot here. You just want to make... The general rule is that the turn before your Tog turn should be the most powerful play you can make, because you want to preemptively set up a board that won't leave you behind on the Tog turn, which is exactly what Kin has done here, potentially to the point where he's considering Eviscerate instead of taking any damage on his Faceless Corruptors.
And that is a lot of respect for something like Blood Boil Brood and the other skipper,
yes.
which he knows is likely in hand after this Ankar swings again. From Kin's perspective, of course, we can see it's already there. I want to say he can hold back and wait another turn. So maybe something like Bomb Wrangler, swing, re-equip.
I think when you
Seems
have this many cards in hand, there's something
Yeah.
more powerful you can spend your mana on than that.
Yeah, I can see it. So if he goes Skipper, Armorsmith, Raider, that creates 5 damage minions on board. So he can
I think
play a
you'd probably look at Armorsmith plus Blood Boil Brute on this turn, which allows him to clear everything off.
He could do that with the Sky Raider as well.
That's true, yeah. I don't think that gains him quite enough of a benefit to be worth clearing off his own risky skipper.
It's true. It's just like a couple extra armor, but damaging his
Right.
own stuff. So makes a lot of sense. He swung back the board, and now Kin. I think he's committed to a Togwaggle plan, but is there any merit to pivoting here? I don't think so.
This really was a deceptively good turn, I think, for Ryvius. Having looked on it a little bit further, like I was saying, you want to set up so your Tog turn is left with an uncontested board on your opponent's side. And Ryvius, using his second risky skipper is a big expenditure in this matchup, but it allows him to get 6 damage to face with this Blood Boil Brute on the following turn.
Potentially huge. He can go for Warmaul onto the Lackey. He left with a 3/9.
He could go Warmaul and then Brute. That would give him the 3 damaged minions on board to get a 4 mana Blood Boil Brute down, and then push the rest face.
Yeah, I kind of like it. But Ryvius wants to keep drawing here. Maybe he's thinking about if the wand comes down next turn and Kin can clear the board, maybe he has to default to the Korkron or Grom type game finishers.
And speak of the devil, here it comes. The Grom plus Inner Rage available on the next turn is so much damage.
Unfortunately for Ryvius, he will have to overdraw unless he wants to expend the Inner Rage, which he really doesn't with a Grom in hand. But you know what? I don't think there's too much left in the deck that he'd be sad to lose.
Anyway, we're looking at pretty much entire board clear or bust, to be perfectly honest.
I will act as your skin.
Box available, Nutella.
These are not bad outcomes. Are they quite good enough?
Card 2 at 1 mana short of being able to play it here. No, he's got a secret with Blackjack. He's got just the Edwin at the end of that, I guess. Not enough mana to fit Seal Fate along with it.
I mean, we could see he pretty much has to play the Bone Wraith, I think, to have any chance here at all.
Wow. Kin does have utmost respect.
Absolutely on the razor's edge here. Ryvius is potentially looking down at, if not lethal on the following turn, big counter swings that would allow Kin to set up 2-turn lethal very easily.
I'm still trying to see if there is a way set up lethal here for Ryvius. So of course the Grom Inner Rage is 12 that needs to go face, but he's got to go through 11 damage worth of taunts.
It's just a bit too much, I think.
Can he set up a free Blood Boil Brood? I don't think so.
Good question.
So if it's not available this turn, Ryvius is instead saying, let me clear the board as best as possible and not die to this Edwin. Granted, I think he's at too high of a health total to be worried about dying exactly next.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way he dies. I like everything I'm seeing. He's still gaining a lot of armor, obviously, off the Armor Smith. And all attacks that can go face, I would like to see go face here.
I wouldn't hate the 1v team on Dolashi. But you know what? Ryvius is on your boat.
Oh yes, and now he has the lethal on the following turn, even with a full board clear. Weapon, Grom, Inner Rage, 14 damage. However, Kin does have the Kartit Defender, which maybe could keep him in the game. It's so close.
Pretty wild, isn't it? Starting off with the Seal Fate leaves him enough mana to play Kartut if he wants. And the Grom Inner Rage has to be on his mind since Ryvius has drawn so much.
But he's also got to be thinking, man oh man, does he want this Edwin to go face?
The reactions today have been amazing, Dara.
Yeah.
All is not lost for Ryvius, even if he can't quite push through this turn. He's got more than enough resources to do it next turn and enough health to survive. Lava Burst, why don't you? Or you could even Mark Shot onto the card. Seems slow.
Yeah, so he doesn't overload. He's using it as a 3 mana 4 damage there, that seems fine.
Even gets the Witchy, using the rogue's own tricks. Onto the henchman. Stealth is very relevant.
The stealth is insane.
What? Kin cannot interact with that. Even with the Twin Tyrant, it would be 1 damage short of being able to kill the tiger. So is it now just hunt for taunt lackeys? All the taunt lackeys. That's
Taunt Dragon? I don't think there's anything at 5 or less mana.
I don't see it. And it had to be this, right? For Rip to have lethal on the next turn. Otherwise, couldn't be a non-stealth minion.
Yep, exactly.
But to be fair, I don't think Kin would have been able, really.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he could have set up 2 turns.
Either way, at the end of all of that, the stealth minion is exactly what Ryvius needed to close things out. And to be fair to him, he has been setting up for this as best as he can for the longest time. Even as early back as turn 5, I think it was, launching all the weapon damage to the face. He did not give a hoot about what his opponent could do to the board. He knew you get stuff on board, you go face, and then the lethal with Grom or Korkron will close things out of the game. And it was a game plan he clearly was aware of right at the start, and it was the game plan that won him the game. Very well executed.
And we can go back to that topic of warrior flexibility on this, because I was saying that at the beginning, against Rogue, I quite like going for, say, an Egg game plan or even a Warmaul Rampage game plan, because those are just cards that Rogue really struggles to deal with in the early game, particularly Death Rattle minions, unless they have exactly the secret Blackjack Stunner, and also just the high health minions. But Ryvius, knowing that he didn't quite want to go for that, and he's also just running 1 Egg, 1 Rampage to begin with, pivoted more towards that endgame OTK. I tell you, it is a combo, Grom and Inner Rage, not 1 card.
Ah, the classic 2-card, 1-effect combo there of killing your opponent with Grom and Inner Rage. And it did work very, very well, which means the only deck left over for Ryvius is the Rogue. We have seen it today struggle, to be fair. It was the one deck that let down Surrender in the reverse sweep against the Druid. It was struggling a little bit in the first series of the day as well. Kin just lost with it, and now Ryvius just has to win one game with the Rogue. Surely he can do it, Gia.
Your back.
I've seen crazier things happen where Rogue gets swept, even on the backswing. I think this happened to me just the other night. I was playing a lineup with Rogue, and the other two decks won right away, and then the Rogue just lost 0-3. So, might not necessarily be all too safe for Ryvius just yet, especially with a strong opener like that for Kin.
It's a strong opening for Kin, but it's a strong opening for Ryvius. You can clearly see with the 1-1 Pirate there that he is not running the regular version of Rogue. This is Highlander, the only Highlander Rogue in Asia Pacific this week, which, given that it is that, he's got a very, very powerful starting hand here.
Mm-hmm. Question is, though, if he backstabs this Battlefiend this turn, is it worth not being able to activate Miscreant next turn? And Ryvius says no, and I agree.
Yeah, really like the double development.
I wonder about even playing them, because if the Battlefiend trades over one of them, then he can't backstab the Battlefiend.
True. However, I think if the Battlefiend trades in and he gets to take it out with the dagger, he's pretty happy with that exchange anyway.
Sure. Alright, this is the big early push that Demon Hunter can do so consistently. Ryvius has got a decent answer.
He does have a good answer, and as it currently stands, if he's able to fight off this early development, he may be in a good spot to just run away with the mid game, because Kin, you know, the Kayn helps there, but he's left with pretty much no development left at all.
Mm-hmm. That way for Demon Hunter, but they run a lot of mid-game powerhouses and a decent amount of card draw, so one Skull or one Warglaves could turn the tides here. Let's see what comes off the Sigil Runner.
Okay. As always seems to be the case here for Demon Hunter, there's always something brewing that you can start going for over the next few turns. Just Kayn on 4, and then Altruist I-Beam Second Slice on 5. That's already a not awful game plan right there.
Definitely not awful. I wonder if Kin would feel like he needs to get more value off of the Altruist, but you make a good point. The way the hand is standing, it seems like he needs to go fast.
Nice big taunt. We saw the power of Evasive Draconid earlier on today, and who knows, maybe it'll be repeated here.
I will still find you.
You see Kin hold back on the second slice to kill off the Lackey, even though it trades up into the Sigil Runner. I think he's really setting up for this Altruist.
Is it cold in the shadows?
Oh,
This
that's
is a
really
smart
strong.
deviation. Yeah. Yeah, the Faceless Corruptor was the obvious play on this turn, but it was just that little bit short of being able to clear properly, whereas now, these likely stick on the board for next turn, and Ryvius is left with a likely Faceless Corruptor, especially when you factor in Kin's pretty weird-looking hand.
To me, the first thing that this screams is just hold everything,
Oof.
and then play it like you would play the Warrior hands. Isn't Altruist just like Risky Skipper? Play a bunch of cards and they deal 1 to everything?
I mean, if by Risky Skipper you mean good, then yes, it is that. As is Skull of Gul'dan off of the top.
Oh my gosh.
Hello?
Both of them have wand-like effects now. But Kin's has the potential to clear off everything Ryvius develops. Maybe not this Draconid, but there's potential.
Ryvius playing at 100 miles an hour, but to be honest, with both his last couple of plays, I've agreed. The 7-7 here is so awkward for the Demon Hunter to deal with. Surely they can't deal 7 damage off of Altruist, right, Gia? Right?
Not quite. Look at all these twin slices and wait. The I-Beam doesn't have a target.
It doesn't have a target.
I just noticed it can only kill Altruist now. Okay, but he can play the twin slice and then get the second slice. Then he can play the... Yeah. That's
Bound.
enough with the... Oh, I was looking
Or you think
at
of
Chaos
Warblades.
Stripe.
Okay.
I grow impatient.
Either way, he's gonna have to
Sure.
face tank some damage and not get the Ultra's value off the left Twin Slice because he can't I-beam.
Well, he could just play the Blazing Battle Mage, right, and then I-beam that, which isn't amazing, obviously, but it allows him to at least get the I-beam down.
It's close. The Kin likes your play. Very smart.
Yeah, it's that little bit short of cleaning, or clearing cleanly rather than cleaning clearly. But it does allow him to clear off the board, at the very least. But Ryvius is not left with, few decisions. He has many, many very powerful choices.
Just notice he's playing Perdition's Blade as well, because this is Highland.
That is weird.
You know what? Talk about Demon Hunter and all the 2 health minions. Might not be too bad.
You know what? If the evasive Draconid was so powerful, you could just taunt up the evasive Feywing, right? And basically do the same thing again.
I like it. That sounds very smart.
This is the most scuffed Draconid I've ever seen, but it might just be good enough.
But look what Kin has, though. He's got the Warglaves. But the thing is, Chaos Strike Warglaves is with Hero Power that gets there, and then he can even send the Glaive Bound face.
Yeah.
We'll be taking 5 in the process and leaving 5 on the board, so it's a bit scary, but he's got to go for it.
Oh, I mean, it's getting close to lethal for Ryvius with just the Perdition's Blade on the other side.
Stepping the Taunt Lackey does nothing against the Warglaves, but he can create 2 taunts. Sorry, 3 taunts. He can play the Shield, the Bone Wraith, and then taunt up a remaining minion.
By stepping the Lackey, very true.
But if he does that, then he can't kill the Glaive Bound, because he's got to trade 3-1 and some... Wait, is this just lethal?
I don't think so.
So he's going Faceless and Bone, and then Step Taunt Lackey. Okay, ends up with 2 taunts this way.
And clears the board. It's as close as anything to lethal, and Kin has to find the answer right now.
Right.
Also, by putting him down to 2, he can't use the weapon.
That's very smart. Instead of playing the Bone Wraith, he says, I'm gonna make my taunt unattackable.
Both I-beams have been played.
Alas, poor warlock.
The second Glaive Bound Adept can't go face, because he can't attack into the minion.
That's just brilliant from
Oh.
My gosh.
That was a sick play. Peace sign thrown up by Ryvius and a 3-0 sweep over Kin. That was decisive. With a weird lineup, we're seeing Quest Warlock being played. We're seeing Warrior being played. I didn't expect to see that at all.
Yeah.
And he's able to
Or
take the
being
3-0
left
sweep.
up, that is a weird lineup. The Highlander Rogue with Perdition's Blade kind of came in clutch right at the end there. It allowed Ryvius that burst from hand to be able to lock out Kin from attacking his own taunt. Very well spotted. I was looking at just, setting up your own wall and then let Kin try and deal with it. But he just locked out all the options, very much aware of all the room Kin that had been expended.
Very, very smart gameplay there by Ryvius overall. It was definitely the harder side for Kin. I think it's fair to say he could have gone for earlier Altruises if he wanted to get a bit of development onto the board early on. I think he saved it for as long as possible. It's just how he executed the Altruist turn that's the really difficult spot there that could have been improved on.
I still think he went about it nearly the best way possible. We were arguing about whether he had to go for the Battle Mage I-Beam, but it seemed good in the end there to guarantee the heal off the I-Beam instead of maybe having to just expend more cards and get less damage with Altruist, because he needed that burst to even try and race against Ryvius. So I would go back and watch that VOD over and over. It's so much high-level gameplay going on.
Definitely something to consider, but that does mean that we are all done with our third match of the day. It does, and now up next we have a very cool match in Alutemu versus Possessi, 2 of the Japanese players who have been practice partners time and time again here at Hearthstone Grandmasters to great effect, given that they have both ended up clearly in Division A. But before we go into that, we're going to go into a slightly longer break. So if you need to get a drink, go to the bathroom. Make sure you're ready before we come back with Possessi versus Alutemu after this.